Hi, everybody, and welcome. And I'm so delighted to be joined by Jane with an immense amount of experience, Jane, in organizational development and organizational change. You've had a lot of experience in overseeing OD, and I wonder what importance you've found about the practice of feedback during organizational change. How does feedback fit in that whole picture?
I think it's critical. Whenever I talk to people about organizational change, one of the things I always say is that you've got to be prepared to be flexible,
Right.
and you've got to be prepared to listen to what your people are telling you and accept if you've got it wrong, or if you things out. Obviously, you can't do that if you don't get feedback. As well as that, I think employee engagement, we all know how important employee engagement is, and we all know that that can be put at risk during times of change.
Right.
One of the things that drives engagement is having good feedback mechanisms in place and giving people a platform, or in fact a variety of platforms through which they can provide feedback. So sure. I think for me it's probably two kind of separate areas intrinsically linked, one of which is about making sure your program's working and it's landing how you expect it to, and the second is engaging your employees.
Because changes, as you and I've noticed over the years, changes is getting incrementally faster, and more demanding, and it has become, as everybody says, like change is the norm now. So what you're suggesting is, which is really interesting, it's not just a matter of getting the strategy of change right. It's a matter of adjusting the change according to the feedback that you're getting during the change. Is that? That's what you're driving at. So change becomes a partnership, really, in the engagement process.
And I think it's important though to say that change needs to be defined, and it does need to be planned. So it's about getting balance right. So I think when change goes wrong is when organizations haven't planned it and it's just kind of chasing a ball as such to get it done. So it's getting that balance right between using feedback to be able to adapt and to change as you go along, but having some structure in place as well. Yeah,
because the opposite would be that the change is meticulously planned and then imposed and nobody buys into it. Happy
medium.
So let's flip that round. So what we're actually saying is that if we establish a feedback culture, we will be more comfortable with change, because people will be used to expressing their thoughts as we're going along. So it's actually quite a good insurance policy, isn't it, for change for the future, to establish the norm that we give each other feedback at all levels. It's just the way we do things. And so I wonder what you've noticed as the main blockages in organizations you've come across. What is it that stops this happening?
I think, the number one thing is the organizational culture and the values that the organization have. Do senior leaders in that organization model the behaviors that they say they do?
Right.
And that builds trust.
Right.
And if you have trust in an organization, you are more likely to get useful feedback and two-way feedback. I think so that would be one of the blockages for me. I think it would be if you don't have a culture where trust is really embedded in what you do. I think another blockage is quite a technical one, really, which is about, well, what are the mechanisms for feedback? How easy is it? Is it a hierarchical organization where people don't feel they can give feedback? Or is it difficult? Is everything done by email? Do you never get the chance to sit down and have a chat with somebody? And I think as well, although I've talked about trust, for some people, they like to have the safety blanket of the option to provide anonymous feedback to an organization, particularly if what they want to feedback about is something that's, a little bit delicate or sensitive. It can give people the courage to provide feedback that they might not otherwise have had. So think carefully about the policies that you have in place that encourage feedback and how you go about that. And then also, I always say, being in HR, I hate to be one of those, process drivers, but process can really help drive a feedback culture. So if you don't have feedback baked into a lot of what you do, then that's going to be a blocker to developing it as common practice. So yes, it's about behavior and it's about culture, but you need to have the processes and systems in place that allow people to feel that they can.
Right. That's quite illuminating, and actually, because it actually is saying, I think, yeah, that helps me understand it a bit more, because we're saying that, look, for example, if we have a confidential feedback system, we can build the verbal feedback on the back of that. So we could say, look, here's the results of the survey, let's talk about it, for example, is a great opening for conversation. So yeah, I get that. Rather than just focusing on behavior and people being open and good questions and listening, we need a way to begin the conversation. So so anonymous feedback, for example, in a survey could be a way of beginning engagement. This is what you're saying, the process structures it.
Yeah, I think as well, you know, with things like surveys, certainly in my organisation, we've worked for a long time now, over a long period, to try and really diminish the mistrust that some of our staff have in what would happen to them if they provided feedback. Now, it was all the stuff of myth and legend that, you know, when you actually say to people, can you give me an example of a time when somebody got in trouble for giving feedback? Of course they can't.
Right.
But that doesn't stop them feeling that way. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. But I think you have to be quite careful if you do provide anonymous mechanisms such as surveys, be careful not to ask people what they said, you know. So it's about dealing with things in the general rather than the specific on that sort of
that's pretty smart. It's got to be fairly astute. And the final question then will be, okay, well, if folk watching this thinking of developing a feedback culture where they are, what would Jane's main 1 or 2 hints be? 1 or 2 tips, or get this right and you've got a better chance? You know, from your experience, Jane, what would you advise folk to do to really address?
For me, there's definitely something around the senior leadership of the organisation practicing what they preach.
Right.
You hear people talking about, you know, that hackneyed term of having an open door policy, but have they really, you know? And I think that's where people will start not believing that it is a feedback culture. So I think there's something there around leadership development, training your leaders in how to give and receive feedback really well. And the receiving of feedback is probably one of my main tips. It's not just about saying give feedback. It's about people being able to not be defensive when feedback's given that they either don't agree with, don't like, or don't understand.
Right.
So that's one of my things, I think, is around the leadership, how they give, how they receive feedback. I think, like I said, the other thing is about just making sure that all of your systems and processes support that feedback culture. So into everything you do. Yeah.
Oh, very quickly then to finish, I was with a company a couple of weeks ago. The CEO had there was a group, probably 25, and said, I'd like 2 or 3 of you to explain some of the mistakes you've made in the last month. And the CEO then said, for example, this is what I did last month. Explained a blunder, and then said, what about the rest of you? I was really impressed with that. Yeah. Because there was this completely normal and relaxed conversation about what we're learning through mistakes.
Yep, absolutely. I used to work for a company many years ago now, very well-known brand, and one of their organizational values, which they had plastered on the walls and on documents, was it's okay to make mistakes, and they were so overt about it.
Right.
But of course you had to make sure that management and leadership did indeed behave in that way. But it's
absolutely
really good thing to do, to openly talk about mistakes at every level.
That's superb. Look, Jane, thank you so much. I know you're horrendously busy. Thank you for joining us on this interview. Really appreciate it, and some really valuable stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.